Hi, and welcome to the Matrexit conference call discussion group. My name is the gatekeeper. Tonight I'd like to go over the disclaimer of the group. The information provided in this discussion group is for educational, entertainment, and informational purposes only. Please keep in mind that everyone's individual circumstance or situation is different and may be subject to change based on the various thoughts and opinions. It's up to every individual competent person to do his or her own research and homework if they feel. The broadcast and host of this discussion group cannot be held accountable for any material shared. We are mere messengers and sharers of this information. We want this group to be about thought-provoking information to accurately help educate and inform those that may be unaware of certain topics discussed. Conclusion: information discussed is not to be construed as legal advice. If you need advice, please seek a competent lawyer. Please enjoy the conference call. I'd like to turn it over to the hosts.
Well, I guess since Audra said she's had a pretty busy week and day and everything, she's going to be a little quieter tonight. So I guess I'll jump in here on that. There's been some developments on my end this week. There's been some developments with the marshals and judges call and the work that's being done there as well. Don't really want to dissuade anybody to go and listen to something else. I was just wrapping up listening to a call from Bruce right now dealing with the situation with Ronnie Davis with the arrest of Shona Banda, and I believe it was Shona. And he is right now on the phone with U.S. federal agents and explaining to them the differences of jurisdiction and that the jurisdiction of the land is over the jurisdiction of the sea. It's some pretty interesting developments that are happening now. So we're going to be able to start seeing some results occur from what's being done nationwide. And the results of things that have been put in place by Judge Doucette and Judge Anna Van Rights. And
if I may.
we're gonna open this up for people asking some Q&As. But first, Judge Greg Johnson is going to come on and share some info with us. What do you got going on, Judge Johnson?
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. I've got my birth certificate in the record now. I get to pick it up in the morning because of the way County of El Paso, Inc. runs things. To let the gatekeeper know that when you turn on the queue for Q&A, that you mute everybody that's not on the host code. Hopefully you already were aware of that. You can turn the Q&A off if you want, since there's not that many folks on otherwise. But I watched the lady do the how careful she was with the whole riveted situation. The procedures here were that she made black and white copies of everything except the cover page, because that was a separate loose leaf, and then went ahead and set it up for recording. So I've got it situated to where I can record it as new anywhere. I can print up a new cover page and go from there and have all that going on. And with that, at this point, I yield the floor.
Are you referencing for sending out your notices with your affidavit or with your certificate of live birth and that information?
Well, all I did was put the authenticated code in the record at this point. I will be doing some registered mailings when the time comes to set out certified copies of that out to the various folks that need to know about this stuff, along with the copyright certifications and stuff when that time comes, after I put that in the record as well. At some point, I'll get to Lincoln, Nebraska, and put it in the County of Lancaster record as well, as being the county of my nativity. And at some point, I'm also hoping to get to Georgia to go face-to-face with the folk down there on doing the 1776 stuff at the point of Yahweh's provision. Would like to do that, but I don't consider it a necessity at the moment. Right now, I'm just laying out a foundation of necessity, which includes the copyright and the authentication. And you and I want a conversation with you on the fictitious name that you put in the Facebook thing, So I want to get better informed on that as to why you're doing that. If you're reclaiming all that is based on you, then why do you need the fictitious name? Unless that's part of the copyright that I didn't get when we talked earlier.
Right. No, actually we could address that right now if you want, because that's one of the things that I had come in this week.
Okay, so I yield the floor and let you talk that through. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I received that this week in my inbox from Florida. It was the registration for the fictitious name. And it's because studying some things also that Ken Dost as well had uncovered, and that was information written into law on Oregon. And I've got that info posted into the group. If people want to go just to the search bar and put in the word Oregon, that will come right up. And it also comes up with the link where you can find that info at. And what that actually stated, and I'm going to see if I can jump over to the group right now and actually try and see if I can read that. Oh, because I really don't want to distort the language of it too much, because I think it's very important for people to comprehend the situation that that everybody's in. I think what's happening, people are losing in court right off the get when they walk in, and it all centers around the name. And the judge may ask, just please state the name for the record, and you're stating a name that was registered at the time of your nativity, but it was registered in the state. It was their paperwork. It was Vital Stats that did it. Vital Stats has an office in every birthing hospital, and they're the ones that do it. And so when you stand in court and affirm, yeah, I'm, John Henry Doe, etc., then you are in commerce and claiming to use a name that doesn't belong to you. You are operating in commerce, the system of commerce and contracts that they are operating in, but you are there without standing. And in that law for Oregon, it was through the Secretary of State's office. And it was found at, I think the site is called Registering Your Business Name, FAQ. And what they said was this: those who do business with an unregistered, assumed business name may not have standing in court to pursue or defend legal actions. So that right there kind of shows you could be losing by default right there, because, and that's part of the reason probably why they can't see you, is because you haven't been linked to their system as to who you are. And so by filing this fictitious name, because in that filing as well, in the questionnaire, it will ask for the owner of that name, And so what I put in was the name as it's commonly used in all caps, and also how they'll use it in court records as well, and on legal papers, any legal papers. They always ask for the last name first, then the first name, then the middle name, or the middle initial. And so I put all three of those into the filing with the living man's name as the owner. Does that make any sense to you, Judge Johnson? And I hope that clarifies things a little bit.
Sort of.
Okay.
I was actually paying more attention. Fortunately, with your posting on the Oregon Secretary of State registering your business name frequently asked questions, and your heading on that says, those who do business with an unregistered assumed business name may not have standing in court to pursue or defend legal actions. My presumption here is that once we get ourselves, the living body, all the various derivations of our living man or woman label, the name, for lack of better phrasing, in my case, Gregory Allen Johnson, and all the derivations thereof, which I've got 12 going on right now, reclaiming all those in the copyright capacity and controlling my affairs on the outside instead of the inside, where where I was a slave. I would think that there would not be a necessity as such, because if you're on the outside and a citizen of the United States decides to sue a non-citizen national, they can't allow that, and they have to dismiss it immediately anyway. Now, if I'm a non-citizen national taking a citizen of the United States to task, I'm not doing it through their judicial setup anyway. I'm either going to them privately, like the Scripture says in Matthew 18:15, the process there through verse 17, or I'm dealing with things in such a way that I'm hitting them possibly with a commercial aid. In my thinking, I'm not using their judicial admiralty commercial system setup that's designed not to function with me in it anyway, against the individual or business group or whatever else that I'm dealing with in an adversarial capacity. So that's my line of thinking concerning the issue of doing any business in their system at all, with the exception of banking in the private capacity and functioning in a business capacity outside of state statutes anyway. And if you're using the fictional thing in that capacity, I'll need to get more of that later, because right now that went in one ear and out the other, and I couldn't stop it from flowing at that point. Sorry.
Well, I understand or comprehend, the not wanting to be active or participate in their commercial system, but there's going to be times where you may get dragged in. That's what I'm saying.
I don't see, if you're able to show yourself as being outside their statutory code authority in the first place, I don't see how they can. The only way that works is if they get you in contract in the first place. They send you paperwork, or they call you up, or they drop by and say, by the way, you've got a dilemma here, you've got this or that or the other. And my presumption is that when I get done getting out, everything that was left over before, warrants, case things and everything else, gets all expunged by my request stating, now that you've recognized my status, I want you to expunge the rest. And no, you don't have a say in the matter. I'm the HNIC of this thing, and you don't really want to have any lingering effects of who you thought I was before I corrected the record nunc pro tunc ab initio. Until that point, I'm in hiding.
Right, and I really think at the end of everything also that there will be stuff on the record that would be an alert to, whether it's just an encounter with an officer or whatever the case may be, or things that you need to do in your county or your state that will flag them as to who you are or whatever. However, in the meantime, you can't educate these people on the spot. So much of this is even too deep for a lot of us to even grasp yet. I mean, I spent a few months actually going over the whole situation with the name and things that I saw different groups doing and things that were obviously not working, and trying to draw that line between the abstract and the concrete in my mind is we are so used to ignoring the abstract, but though the abstract and assumption and presumption is what the corporation is using. That's why they can't hear fact. They can't hear stuff about yesterday or tomorrow. Everything for them is now. And
that's interesting, because syntax is now, and everything they've got in their codes and ordinances and statutes is either past tense or future tense.
Right, like the words shall or may.
Yeah.
And so
that's not an immediacy terminology.
Right.
To
exactly.
From. It's not immediacy terminology. When Miller pointed that out in his in his 3 or 4 seminars on that syntax is now time with the nouns, real nouns, and the adverb verb fiction is what they use to keep everything in keep everything fluid.
Yep. And you brought up saying being an American national, and my mind flashed back to what the Calhoun.estates had said at the end of each process of authentication, that you have the ability to be a natural-born American. In the Calhoun.estates, it never says the word, doesn't use national, it doesn't use citizen or anything like that. And I was reading something about the word national this last week, and they were saying, yeah, you kind of want to stay away from the word national. And actually, I brought that up right here in Black's Law 4th edition under the word national. So it's a noun. 1, a member of a nation. 2, a person owing permanent allegiance to and under the protection of a state, which is under 8 U.S.C. Part A and 1101A and 21. So, who do we owe allegiance to? It says a national owes allegiance to a nation, and the assumption and presumption is that the allegiance you owe is to them. They are the nation. And although we know that a federal corporation cannot be a nation or a government, you find that in the Clearfield Doctrine. So I've myself kind of steering away from the word national because that opens the door for them to have an assumption or presumption. I remember when myself and a couple friends were up at the governor's office here in Florida, and we were giving them notice and surrendering some paperwork to them that the governor's, one of the guys he works with, one of his attorneys, asked us like 3 times, so what nation are you with? What nation are you with? And they're looking for something that is being recognized by their nation. Do the 2 nations have an agreement with each other? And there's a lot of work being done on that actually right now. The Gemstone University has developed something that seems to be working, and Bitcoin actually right now is working on that same exact topic. And using Bitcoin's analogy with what they're doing is that the nation that the people will be under isn't going to be a physical place. It's not going to be a specific location. The members of this nation will be scattered all over the world. But though it is going to be accepted, and I believe already has been accepted by the United States. And in Bitcoin's nation, there is no strict law. It's basically just natural law. Do no harm. There is no recognition of any kind of religions or dogma. Everybody basically coexists and respects each other. But it's something that people can belong to that is not part of the actual corporation that everybody was tricked into signing into at their birth. Which a lot of people say, hey, there's no disclosure. It's all fraud, and based on fraud, on its face, it's void. Well, there may not have been total disclosure. The information has been out there. People just didn't want to research and read it, and the parents went ahead and signed the child into that corporation. Number 1, giving birth in a delivery room, which to deliver is to transfer ownership.
It's our fault, not theirs, because we didn't do due diligence. Well, we didn't know to do due diligence. We said you might want to look this stuff up. They were quiet about it for the sake of deception. And so I disagree with her there on the issue that it's our fault. If it's my fault, and I need to take ownership of the whole thing in that matter, then why don't I just use my birth certificate to discharge the entire everything and dissolve the Vatican that way?
And I agree. And I think when Lauren is talking about it being our fault, and that phrase is used a lot, it's not really us specifically, but the nation as a whole has slipped. Well, we let go of the reins. We let the corporation come in, and we let it's essentially the Bar Association. We let them step in and take over. And, it's very easy to sit back and do nothing as long as stuff in our immediate presence around us is doing okay.
I can see that to a point. Again, it was done under deception. There's no other way to look at it as having been done from the beginning, designed to take over usufructs that I didn't even hear the term until Boris Erickson threw that word out there about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm going, what the hell's that? And I looked it up, and Black's Law typed it out, sent it out to everybody I knew, as this is how they're controlling us. And I still don't know where the term comes from. I know how to pronounce it, what it means for the most part. Could explain it a little bit if I needed to. However, the term itself does not compute as far as a word origin for me.
Well, the word usufruct originally was found, I believe, in some of the writings of Jefferson when they were organizing this corporation.
Guy was too smart for his own good.
Yeah, right. And, it's the people's responsibility to do their own due diligence and go and research this stuff. And it can be arduous, but, a little bit of knowledge and research and understanding earlier in life, had it been done, would have made the rest of our life a lot easier. And
that wasn't the idea, and we both know that.
Right, I know that. But, for people that aren't familiar with the term usufruct, I want to explain to everybody how they are living in usufruct of everything right now. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. And I'm going to look at the ownership of your home. Most people on their mortgage is listed as a tenant, all right, if you look at the deed. And if you are paying taxes on property, then you don't own it. And that's the bottom line. You don't pay taxes on something you actually own. So, and these homes,
Ron, do
these
you want
corporations...
to take a moment and go through split title on that?
Yeah, we can do that towards the end of this here.
Okay.
In a couple minutes. But, and it's a split title is the problem. It's exactly correct. But so that means we are living in a home that belongs to someone else. These homes and corporations, businesses, these all make up the value of the United States. When you look at the country or the corporation's value, it's like, wait a minute, well, what do they really own? Well, believe it or not, they own everything because it's all been given over to them. Basically, because we didn't know, through acquiescence. But with your home, you're living in a home actually using the enjoyment of something that belongs to someone else. That is the basic premise of usufruct. And, if you want to talk about split title, Justice Johnson, go ahead.
You do the quick explanation on that? Certificate of title is exactly that, a certificate of. It's not the actual, it has never been, and neither is the deed, because if your family line is the first on that land from another family line, then the term tenant will apply on the deed itself. However, if it's an inheritance situation, at least here in Colorado and County of El Paso, Inc., the term tenant does not appear on the deed. I went through that and never saw, I didn't actually see the term tenant until I came up across somebody else's, and I said, did you buy that from somebody else? Yeah, and then you didn't inherit? No? Okay. And they showed me the term tenant. I'm going, aha, all right, interesting. And they had attorneys and everybody else involved, just as I did with my inheritance in the first place. And you like to come out of the womb with everything you're going to know for the rest of your life, but that doesn't work out well. You got to learn this stuff as you're going, unfortunately. The term tenant only goes on the first generation of a land ownership situation from one party to another. And the deed itself is user authority, not full lawful title to it in the capacity of lodial or land patent. And same thing with cars and automobiles, is the certificate of title is user authority. They hold the MSO if it still exists, or they just receive the bill of sale, which is a lawful authority to buy, sell, trade in the lawful capacity in private lawful situation. Okay, I better stop before I trip over myself some more.
Well, and that split title he's referring to, and people can go and research this and do your own work and look this up so you can get a grasp on it, is that split title is split into equitable title and legal title. But it needs to be done, and that's what's being done actually with our titles, the certificate of live birth, is we're joining those, and we're perfecting the title. The title is perfected when the legal and the equitable is joined. That is my realization of this, how it works. And I was actually just thinking about situation when I was younger. I'm an avid hunter, shooter, etc., outdoors person. And sorry to use the word person, but a friend of mine, he was kind of an inventor. And he worked for a company that produced different products, etc. And he was, say, registered or enrolled as an employee of theirs. So they had usufructory ownership over his work. And him and a couple of friends developed and patented, well, the company ended up patenting it because they had ownership of his work, the fuel-injected engine. And so this gentleman today should be a multimillionaire, and he's not, because his work through usufruct was actually owned by the corporation that he was an employee of. And because he had come to me, because what he was developing was a target that you could have something right next to you that would show you where you're hitting the target at. That way it would do away with those super expensive, binoculars to sight in and have somebody spot you and tell you where at the target you were, He was just trying to simplify things. So, and I thought that was an interesting situation that had happened to him. And also back to the name, the filing the name. And I also did a copyright. I got my copyright back for my signature. All right. And the site I use also allows you to add 5 basically addendums to that within the first 30 days for free. And it is a very cheap process to do, and it's good for your lifetime plus 50 years. And so what I copyrighted was, in their terms, what they call a work of art, which was the signature. And then for the description in there, I added in that the signature, when deciphered, looks like, and I use the 3 basic forms that a name is used in. So that is also tied in, those 3 legal personalities into the copyright as well, which, if people know what happened during the mortgage crisis, a lot of this information came out regarding the robo-signers and people's signatures just being thrown all over the place on things that were turned into securities and sold on the open market, which eventually brought down the economy of a lot of countries, which we were very much at fault for. But listening to another friend of mine talk here a couple of weeks ago, he was asked if he had gotten out of the system, if he's out of the matrix. And he said, yeah, he has been, but he keeps getting yanked back into it. And so this situation came up in my mind when he said that, because he said what was happening to him was that he'd have a family member or somebody that would do something as simple as go get a hunting license for him, which would enroll him back into the corporation, back into the United States.
A family member goes and get a hunting license, and he's back, and he himself, a separate singular living male, is dragged back in.
Right.
So it has to do with the family name.
It has to do with the family name and the signature being used. And that's why I say copyright that signature.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because that could put a roadblock to that situation right there, to keep anybody else from
precisely
pulling you back in.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And also keep, other parts of the corporation from going and turning that signature into other things. It's listening to a situation here a few weeks ago where a guy had, there was actually a couple guys, they had problems with credit cards and debt, third-party debt collectors, and the guy started thinking about what the different terms for a bill, maybe a bill of sale would be, or the terms for what a security needed to be, what information it needed to have on it. And it took his mind back to the thought of the application that you fill out to get the credit card. And how many times that you go into gas stations or different big box stores and they're constantly hounding you. Oh, have you signed up for our card? You can get 5% off today if you sign up, da-da-da-da. And how many of those people have filled out all over the place? And under the thinking of those applications actually being able to be a bill of exchange, he contacted, in writing, of course, everybody needs to do everything, their correspondence, in writing through registered mail, return receipt request. That way you've got validation that it has been received. And that's what he did with them. And what his question was, is he wanted to see their copy, not the original, but their copy of that application and any CUSIP numbers that were attached to it. Because for those that don't realize that a CUSIP number is the tracking number that's used for everything. You might even go as far as to say, in a way, that your Social Security number is a CUSIP number. And that's how you get tracked all over the place. And the different licenses you get, different jobs you've had, is everybody asks for that number. But in requesting that CUSIP number, these credit card companies turned around and wrote off his loans. And they disappeared. And in fact, I believe he even went back and got new cards through the same companies. But because the problem was that if they divulged that they had attached a CUSIP number to that application, the cat would be out of the bag. And the scam that they've been pulling on everybody thousands of times a day would be exposed. And so for people that think you're listening to the news and you're talking about the country being broke and everything like that, that's all a bunch of hogwash. Number one, we know money is fictional. We know money is fictional, and they're developing it left and right from the little things that we do.
Well, not only that, but there's also the comprehensive annual financial reports, which has been taken to be euphemistically called CAFR, and there's private asset-based funds on the private side of banking that folks are becoming aware of. Walter Billion did an excellent expose on that twice on the biggest gaming town.
Yeah, absolutely, especially the GSA bonds, things like that. I mean, they're robbing those CAFR accounts constantly. I really don't write down notes for stuff to talk on, but I've got a couple of things that I had written down here that people really need to be aware of. And I really want people to go out and I'm going to do a Q&A here shortly. But this whole system that we're operating under, it has been so fraudulent, it's unbelievable. And even as far back as Henry Ford which, I mean, at the beginning of the automobiles being put on the streets here, he even said that if people realized how money and banking really worked in America, that there would be a revolt on the street by morning.
Yeah, I remember reading about Ford saying that.
It's that horrendous. It's that horrendous. And so people need to go out and, you know, you can go to YouTube and just put in, you know, how's money created? It's just stupid questions like that, and you'll be amazed at the information and stuff that you're going to find out. It's really incredible. Gatekeeper, did you want to open up Q&A?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do that.
We're out of check.
All right. If anybody wants to ask a question, push *6 on your phone.
Yeah, to confirm.
Anybody out there who wants any question asked, press *6 on your phone.
And what we want to really try and help people with is, you know, I know a lot of people are getting their certificates of live birth authenticated. Everybody is at different stages of that. If anybody has questions about doing that, if people have any questions about doing the DBA, which is also called an assumed name or a trade name, business name, it just depends on where you're living at. And we'll gladly try and answer any of those questions that we have. As far as, you know, you got nailed for running a red light and you've got court tomorrow morning, I really can't help you there. And you should have taken care of that in the first 72 hours of the ticketing. But, yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in, and we'll do what we can, especially as long as we've got Judge Johnson here. We can utilize him for the Q&As, too.
Hey, don't you dare think about that.
If I may, Brian.
Yes.
All right. Let me make this known. I've been dealing with this problem for weeks, and Brian can concur with me that a few days ago the streaming was great. Now I'm starting to realize that YouTube's our enemy. I don't know if... Of course
they are.
Oh, yeah. What's crazy is I purchased this broadcasting because at first they give you a free trial. So I went ahead and purchased it, maybe get a little more faster streaming rate. Well, that don't seem to be the deal here. Hey, if somebody's trying to stop us, they haven't stopped us yet. You know, they might hinder us, but they're not going to stop us. So, that being said, there is a questionnaire on the Q&A, Brian. So I'll let him speak here. 916, go ahead.
Judge Johnson?
Yes.
I just want to ask you about the recording. You recorded it in your local county, the authenticated birth certificate?
I did.
Did you attach, you just did the...
Forgive me for not clarifying. Yes, I put a cover page on top of it for the sake of having their sticker to put on. Yeah, oh yeah. Right now I've got it situated. I can print as many of those as I want and record it all over the place using that method, of which the riveted part, they folded it back very carefully. I watched her do it. And their policy is that anything that's riveted together as staying together, they go and make black and white copies, and then they will scan that into the public record as a full sheet at that point. So she went and did that, and then took my original cover sheet on that, put that with the other 3 pieces of paper, the carrier authentication, state authentication, and the COLB is what I'm calling it now, COLB, certificate of live birth, and put that in the hopper to be scanned in at night when they do that sort of stuff. So I've got my original back, basically, except for the cover sheet, what they kept with it.
Did she stamp your original, or did she just stamp the cover sheet?
When I got certified copies, I got 2 of those along with along with discharging the cost of the recording. She went and made 2 sets of certified and stamped the cover sheet, the copy of the cover sheet itself.
Okay, so she didn't.
No, she did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that when I sent mine into Lamar County
Yeah.
to have recorded, I had he basically stamped every page of the authenticated birth certificate that was recorded. So when I got my
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
My assessment of that is because of the rivet, they considered it one document, therefore it only needed to be stamped on the front page.
Okay, yeah, but again, the certified copy is what is stapled. It's is that cover sheet? That cover sheet's not attached to your original.
No, it was
Okay.
paper clipped to it for the purposes of what I was doing today.
Yeah,
At some point, I may decide, and it could get a little interesting, to try and rivet the whole thing, and which messes up the carrier authentication, state authentication, puts another hole in it. So I'm not sure I want to go there.
Yeah.
But for the purposes of having it along for the ride, getting a certified copy of this stuff, I got two today, and they stapled it together. They don't do rivets at the county clerk and recorder.
Yeah.
So that, and they stamped the top page. They put the sticker on the cover sheet that I included with that, for the sake of preserving the authentication documents themselves.
Okay.
And it worked out.
All right.
It worked out great. I was very blessed in that manner and effort, and the Holy Spirit showed me because I was looking at that and said, I don't want a sticker on that thing, and immediately I'm seeing a picture of cover sheet 4, blah blah blah, and language is already pretty much there. I just didn't get a look at it while it was flashing in front of my eyes, so I asked the Lord again, and He said, cover page for the for the authenticated birth certificate for Gregory Allen Johnson. And I'm going, okay, that works. And even set the spacing up, because I use of in the between for the middle and last for the sake of the biblical proportion of I am the Johnson family, Gregory Allen.
Okay.
So I set the spacing and the lettering on that so that the of could be there, but wasn't because of other things I've come across. For that,
beautiful.
For that specific. Well, the passport situation is that they had to have the of in there the first time I applied. I redid my ID completely, my private ID that I made myself. To eliminate the of as a word in there, I kept the spacing though.
I see.
Yeah, it's one of my neurology quirks. No, I didn't have any problems with it at all. The Lord blessed completely. Had a great time with her, and looking forward to picking it up in the morning.
Good.
Yeah, and I like I said, I got my original and the 3 sheets of paper riveted together. Those are downstairs. They made black and white copies for the recording.
Yeah.
Right then and there. So I was rocking at that stage. And then at some point I'll get it to Nebraska, and another point I'll get it to Georgia. I'd like to do that. Like I said, as far as I'm aware, it's not a necessity. So yeah, I put that in the public here. Apparently the guys doing the scanning picked their own category, so it'll be interesting to see what category they throw it into, if they did at all.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I was, with my method, I think once I got it back from Cary, I went to Lamar County and had it recorded there. I haven't yet called them and get certified copies of it yet, which I'm sure I can do any day now. I'm just depending on the money flow, whether I can allot that at this time. But yeah, so I was basically, I went to Lamar County and then was going to start noticing everybody with certified copies from there. I think I was going to go to the birth county and then to local county. So you're just kind of doing it just a different way that I'm doing it, which is all perfectly fine. Everyone, it seems to be working. So
yeah, I do recommend a cover page for it, so you can keep the carry authentication, which ends up on top and ends up riveted, clean. You don't want a bunch of stickers on it, and it's not advisable anyway because you're gonna put that in several areas per se. I got 3 in mind as it is: the County of El Paso, where I'm at, physically, where I guess I should not where I'm at, but where I'm on, because it's a landmass. County of Lancaster in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I came out of my mother's womb, and County of Lamar in Georgia. And then, when I get there, I'll probably be talking to Bill Hewitt as to the specifics and procedures of exactly how I do this without mucking things up. Do I visit him first, or do I go to Atlanta, Georgia, where the SOS is, and get the Great Seal, then record it that way, along with the cover sheet that I'll be bringing along with me anyway, and going from there.
See, from my understanding of what this process was, is, and talking a little bit with Bill Hewitt, is that there is nothing to authenticate in Atlanta with the Secretary of State if you haven't recorded it in Lamar County.
So Lamar County first, and then there. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, because what you're doing is authenticating that
His
Bill
stuff.
Hewitt, his stuff,
Yeah.
and I think my understanding was, after I went back to that seal, I may just re-record the Georgia seal back into the record, into the miscellaneous filing. It just,
again,
I'm trying to create that little loop where they catch the loop and then just loop in on itself. So
sure, yeah, no argument there. Whatever you feel comfortable with doing. Right now, just my other 2 are desires not yet fulfilled because right now of economics, which I'm hoping to have resolved in the next couple of months with somebody who can teach me how to deposit the COLB authenticated into the Treasury of the United States of Puerto Rico.
see
I got
that
it right the first time. I'd probably be sitting pretty nice right now, but I didn't realize that the Treasury itself for the Republic had moved off land.
I was under that same mistaken impression, and I think I sent mine. Yeah, well, mine was to Lou, and it wasn't authenticated at that period. So, now,
I got that same situation because I was paying a bit more attention to Brandon Adams than probably I should have. But at the same time, I'm not that fantastic of a researcher. I'm gleaning off of other people's diggings, to say the least. Brian, you're the guy that's bulldozing in front of me right now, so shoot me for that later. I'm not really good at digging through code, and I've read code. I'm good with if I can turn it to a rhythm, I can memorize it. 26 USC is probably the one that I've got the most code memorized from, whether it's 3401C, 3401B, 501c3 for the nonprofits, 508c1a, capital A for the churches, and 7343 for the definitions. One of the definition pages, 7701 if memory serves me, for the other definition page of for this chapter, for this title and all that neat stuff that they put in there. So 26 USC is the one I pay the most attention to, and rightfully so, because it's the one that rapes people the most. I've also got some stuff out of 8 USC, 5 USC, 18 USC, 15 USC, and 42 USC. And 15 only because Brandon played with it as collections department, and I also worked as a collector for a while, so I got the FDCPA shoved through my head. And when I realized what was really going on, and in one particular case actually made me quit, I said, I can't collect on this. And they said, they want you to do it anyway. And I said, they've already been paid. And the insurance company is not going to go put the microfiche in the machine, print up a copy of the canceled check and send it to them. They're tired of this. They're not playing. I've gotten... From the client, and so basically that particular debt already paid by insurance still stuck on the credit that the slaves couldn't take off, because the one receiving the funds, Penrose Hospital here, did not decided that it didn't happen. They didn't want going to check their records or nothing else. They had to have it dangling in front of them. Oh, so we did get paid. Well, let me check on that. Well, by gosh, you're right, we did. That's where a point where I would just dissolve Penrose, in this case, Centura Health. I just dissolve that. At the time, I was barely getting my feet wet in this stuff. It wasn't until 2009 I tripped over Brandon Adams through a link and started really getting myself soaked up in this and started grasping what he was going on. He could explain it well on Creditors in Commerce, and listened to all the audio several times. Did some of his paperwork, including the A for V on the birth certificate, which went to Geithner in this case, and did it wrong, obviously. At the same time, they didn't return it. They don't return anything anyway. They just either will shred it or make use of it or whatever. So I appreciate Brian's research deeply, because he apparently can dig up stuff that I don't even know where to find it, let alone read it. So I'm leaning on him, and he already knows that now, and etc. Now, there are stuff I have been able to look up, because I wouldn't have got this far otherwise, and I'm just not that solid. If I've got a reference point, I can go to it, read it, figure it out, look up the terms I don't know in a law dictionary or whatever definitions page they've got in that particular title, and go from there. But I got to have a reference point first. I can't just say, type stuff in and it pops up for me. I'm not quite that blessed yet. I yield the floor.
Did that answer your questions?
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Brian?
Sure, go for it.
And this may be a controversial thing, and that shouldn't be in the public, but I've been lately thinking about how do we park this public entity into a safe position that we've separated ourselves. And again, I start thinking about electricity as like how do we ground the public entity? And, there's thoughts on different areas of setting up a trust, and, some are common law, some are private, some are public. And to me, in my thinking, is that these documents, I know, are fictional beings that aren't our property. These trusts weren't created by us. Even though they're using us as the creditors for these entities, these weren't created by us. And so in claiming back these estates or these trusts, we still want to be careful of, it's not ours, but we basically, the idea I'm thinking is that we need to ground, or we need to bury that, bury that civilly dead fictitious entity. So, part of me is thinking of a trust. I've heard the term pass-through accounts. Is there any thoughts on that? Because again, in listening to many different groups on many different calls, we start to get on the cusp of this public-private conversation, whether we can really go into that, And so I'm just kind of asking your thoughts on how to properly ground this public entity so that we can, when we create our own private entities to work from, we're insulated from that public entity. Do you feel what I'm saying? Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And what I'm looking at is that things, in the end, are going to be done much simpler than what a lot of different, I hate to use the word gurus, but different people are teaching or showing. Especially getting into trust law. Trust law can be so complicated, and you've really, by the time you get into it, you should be able to wrap your mind around how a trust is set up and how it's organized. But for the average Joe, it's pretty difficult to do. And like I said, I think at the end, it's really as simple as filing your notices, because when you talk about parking this public entity? Well, this public entity is a fiction. It exists only on paper and in the mind of the courts, and unfortunately, it operates in the mind of the people as well, and they don't even realize that it's a fictional entity that they're claiming to be. So it's like, where do you park something that's fictional? You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's as simple as notices, which will be like the revocation of election to the Treasury. And people hear the word election, they think about voting. And really all that is, revocation of election. Election is a choice. Well, you're revoking your choice, like with the Treasury, which is the same as the IRS, Social Security. They're pretty much, they're on the same building. You're telling them that you've essentially repented. You've changed your mind. I no longer wish to be, in the case of the Treasury, a taxpayer. In the case of sending it to Department of Transportation, I'm revoking the election to represent this corporate fiction. And the same that you would send to the DOT is what's going to be sent to the Secretary of State at state and federal levels. And really, at this point, I don't think that you could send that notice off to a lack of alphabet agencies. Eventually, we're going to find exactly who's at the core of it, which to me is starting to look like the Department of Homeland Security, because they've started blanketing so many of these little departments of the corporation. They're all falling under Department of Homeland Security now. So that really just may be the final place it needs to be done at.
But is Homeland Security, do they fall under the Department of Transportation, or has the Department of Transportation fallen under the Department of Homeland Security? Do you know that?
I think they're falling under Homeland Security. And because what we're doing is we're dissolving this entity. This entity, we don't care for this to even exist anymore. We just want to operate as the man. We don't want to operate in a fiction.
It seems like with the notices, we're more just severing those ties where we can get charged from. But I think the question I was leaning towards is like, yeah, we can sever all the ties, but somehow there's one little thing that's attached to us, and it finds us and it zaps us. So yes, we can be diligent and cut our ties with the IRS or Treasury or Social Security. But then there's, but what I'm more looking to do, thinking about is like, there's got to be a way to insulate that entity somewhere, so when that charge hits that thing, when the charge hits that, it goes to the transformer and grounds out. And so we're like, oh, we just end up coming by and I'm like, oh, I just noticed that there was a charge and it disappeared. We're not suddenly walking around and getting hung up and go, wait, how did I just get zapped there? And I know that we've been, for the longest time, we've been picking up the charge. Hey, is the name here? Oh, it's right here. Ow! We're getting zapped every time that we are claiming the name, their name. So, I don't know. I was just kind of getting towards the idea of properly putting that dead fiction to rest and to bed and bury that thing, so anything that's still attached to it just grounds out, But I don't know. Anyways, I'll yield. But thank you for everything.
May I?
Well, yeah. That's what I did. That was my purpose behind filing the fictitious name and doing the copyright, was to put up a brick wall. That way, when access to that fictional entity tries to be accessed, a brick wall is being hit. Go ahead, Audra.
Well, this isn't Audra. I don't know if Audra wants to speak.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just heard a voice in the background and thought it was Otter. No, go ahead. Yeah, just let us know who you are, where you're from.
Okay, this is Jody from Michigan. I just wanted to comment about Homeland Security, if I can. I recall when, during the presidential election, and I think it was 2008, when Rick Santorum was running for president, and when he was campaigning, he was actually doing some live speeches, and I actually heard him state that the Department of Homeland Security is a foreign entity and it does not have our country's best interest at heart. And Rick Santorum is also a foreign policy expert, so I'm kind of wondering if we should be looking into foreign policy documentation for some clues about them, and also if Anna maybe might know anything about that, if it's possible for her to look into that too. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And then if you guys want to comment, that's fine. I did have another question, but I can let somebody else go if they have one too.
Oh, no, go ahead with the next question, and I'll address your first statement also when you're done.
Oh, okay. And forgive me if I've asked you guys this because it's things kind of are running together from call to call that I'm on. But I am in a situation where I'm under guardianship, so via my county public guardian office, and I talked to Cookie initially about it, and she said that I needed to change my name. But now on last night's call, they were saying that you don't have to change your name. So I don't really know. It's kind of confusing when it goes from one thing to the other, and I can see how changing my name would help get me out of it. Do you guys have any input on that at all?
I got a question for Brian based on that very thing. Brian, would copywriting her work of art, as such, her autograph, listing all the variants of her name, like I've done, and I'm going to pop that into you so you can see what I've got going on and how extensive it is, do anything for her as far as taking their toys away?
That may accomplish the same thing as, or even better than the name change does.
Yeah, because that was the thing that I didn't want to do. I've been stuck with Gregory Allen Johnson for 53 years. I had a dad, so I'm not adverse to the family name, and really don't want to dispense that just because the Satanic Corporation has decided that they need it more than I do, according to them. I disagree with that completely, and it's mine. It's because I came out of my mother's womb. I got the Johnson name automatically. Gregory Allen. Gregory came from my dad via the Holy Spirit as watchman on the wall, and Allen came from my mother on the issue of Alan a Dale from Robin Hood. So it's pretty well chosen as a whole. So I'm not going to dispense with it. I'm taking it back. That's all there is to it. They can argue all they want. They can try and put me out of their misery. They have to argue with Yahweh God the Creator over that issue. So I'm suggesting copyright. And now you're not copywriting the Josie, Michigan, whatever the label is on that. You're including that in, but you're actually copywriting your autograph, whatever that may be, as a work of art, non-negotiable. And Brian can explain that a whole lot better than I can. I yield the floor.
Well, yeah, and then you explain what that work of art is, and that work of art is your name in all the forms used by the court. And as far as the name change goes, everybody hears name change and they're thinking, okay, well, what do I call myself now? It's so much simpler than that. The name change is simply just that all-cap name that they use in whatever form. You're changing that back to the original Christian style that you were born and that you were given. Because nobody writes their name in all caps, because that falls under Capitis Diminutio maxima, which is the highest level of loss of rights.
Okay,
and
let me throw something else in here quickly, is the old lowercase that Anna uses in her book. Because that's what she threw me, the Capitis Diminutio, however that's pronounced. Get my tongue tied around Latin. Yeah. I still can't pronounce. If I can't pronounce it, it doesn't stick well in my head. So I need help with that. And because she uses all lowercase on her stuff because the Roman Empire signage or autographing preceded the English language. And that's where she's getting it from, according to an email she sent me about it. I'm going, really? Roman Empire? English? Come on now. Is this the 10th rule of capitalization? There is none for the living man or woman? And that's how Lorna Cole's going about it as well. And so I'm still a bit befuddled on that, to tell you the truth, and I need some help getting that adjusted in my brain so that I can not only grab the history of it, the lawfulness of it, the contractuousness of it, contractuality of it, and the rest that goes with it. Otherwise, I need help. I yield the floor.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I do agree with it going back to the all lowercase, because even the upper lowercase is referred to as Capitis Diminutio medium, which means a medium, a midpoint loss of rights. So the total rights, from what I've studied, would be the all lowercase. So, yeah, go ahead with what you're going to mention about Maria Janet.
Yeah, that was exactly well, she didn't say about the loss of rights, but she was saying the correct way to do it was to drop your last name and to use all lowercase. She said that last night, too.
Yeah, and I think I could probably agree with that. That also, as well as the copyright, might cut a tie and throw a brick wall to an access between trying to get you to claim to be a fictional entity, because it would cut its tie to you. So yeah. I comprehend her thinking there. And I don't want everybody that listened to last night's call with Judge Bruce, I don't want people to go, oh my God, so everything I've heard, maybe you're wrong, this is a total readjustment of everything. I really don't think so. That is not, immediately when I was listening last night, the first thing that popped in my head was that the apostles were imprisoned. The apostles, were crucified, many of them. They're gonna throw brick walls up at you, and they want to see how you handle it, and if you handle it correctly. When the apostles were thrown in prison, they still stayed on course, and they still placed all of their faith in Yahuwah, who caused an earthquake and the release of them.
Yep. Maria Janet does her first, middle, and lowercase as a known by. She leaves the contracting name, family name, and she's got 5 to choose from apparently, out of the equation completely when she's doing the oral discussion with whomever is trying to contract with her. I do see that. I don't have a problem with going by Gregory Allen. That's fine, as in the oral capacity. But when I'm doing a contractual situation, it has to include the family name as far as I'm concerned. And I got to have control of that family name, whether they like it or not. And since they don't, they can go suck eggs.
I was wondering also, could you use, like I was hearing Ronnie Green take his oath, and at the end of the oath he said House of Davis. So can you make that your last name, House of, and then your surname?
You can try that. I don't recommend it if you're in an oral situation of, if you're doing a written thing, that's one thing. The reason why I stick of Johnson in the equation, and probably shouldn't as a whole, so I got to space it out so it can be there, but isn't. The family name comes in the aspect of commerce actions and contract on the public side of the equation. In other words, it's written down, it's, agree to this and blah, blah, blah as a memorialized contract. If you're doing just the known by situation, go by first and middle and leave the family name out of the equation. You can use house of, but if you're doing that to a guy pulling you over or somebody giving you a hard time in the municipal corporation level, regardless of whether it's city, county, state, federal, whatever, then you're giving them the family name, and they can contract with house of whatever. Because they'll just take the whatever and run with it, leave the house of off of it. So that's something to consider in this situation.
Yeah, but what if you copyrighted it like that? Could they still do that?
Do what now?
If you copyrighted it as house of and then your family name, could they still do that? Or they probably
Well,
would
you're
take
not,
leeway to do that, right?
you're including all that in with, you're actually copyrighting the autograph as a work of art, non-negotiable. Again, Brian can explain that better than I can. What you're including with that copyright is the rest of the stuff and the variations of the label. But you're not copyrighting, Brian, are you copyrighting necessarily all those Brian G. Parker and Brian Glenn Parker and all that stuff? Is that, yeah, I know it's part of it, but is it a specific that you're doing in that, or is it just adjoining all the variations of the label, mostly uppercase, with your non-negotiable work of art?
I'm tying those in as an explanation as to what that work of art is. And I put in there that when this work of art is deciphered, it is this. And then it goes into the different forms of the uppercase name.
Okay. I'm going to send you my list, and you're going to probably say, what the heck is he doing? And then talk later with you about it to make sure, because like I said, you only do this once. So I need to do it right the first time, not correct number 55. I ain't got time for that.
Yep, exactly. And also, Jody, a lot of this info and things that people are doing, there is no definite answer to any of it, really. What is recognized even within a state, what is recognized in one county of a state, another administrator acting as judge may look at it and be like, what the heck is this? And might be confused by it and might throw things out because of it. So it really varies, I think, probably on where we are at. But as everybody starts getting on the right track with everything, it'll also help start educating some of these public servants as well. And I wanted to address the first thing that you had brought up regarding Homeland Security and them being a foreign power, because they are a foreign power. They are foreign to us. The Department of Transportation is foreign to us. Washington, D.C. is foreign to us. Your governor's office of your state is foreign to you. Okay? And
yeah, I guess anything that originated out of Washington, D.C., it's all foreign to us, right?
Anything federal is foreign. Yeah, when you see federal, think foreign.
Okay.
May I add to that for a second? Anything that is municipally structured is foreign to the land.
Yep.
Okay.
You got a city of, which is or town of, which is a municipal corporation. You got the county of or parish of municipal corporation. You've got state of, definitely municipal corporation. You got U.S. Inc. in D.C. municipal corporation, two of them actually. D.C. itself is structured in that capacity, along with the federal government itself. And that doesn't limit itself to the landmass United States. It goes over to Europe, all over the planet. Basically, if you got a gold French flag flying around somewhere in that land mass, you're part of the Vatican system, and that's what's going on with the corporations. All corporations are Vatican corporations, whether they realize it or not. I yield the floor.
And when people see that word of, that's your signal right there. When you see the word of, it should flash in your mind the word franchise. You know, it's just like when you're looking at Walmart, you're not looking at Walmart Corporation. They exist on paper somewhere else in a file drawer someplace. You know, you're looking at one of their franchises. And these courts, and I'm sorry, even your police department, they're all registered on Duns and Bradstreet. These are all foreign corporations to us.
I concur.
They are operating in the de facto. And what we're doing is we're returning to the de jure. We're going back to the original land that was granted to us in the original trust by our Creator in the book of Genesis. And like I said, I wanted to address also, you know, on that same point, when you were talking about that, you know, I hear and see people all the time saying things like, oh, we need to throw the UN out of the United States, and people complain that the UN building, they pay no rent on the building, You know, each floor may be a different country. Nobody's paying any rent on it. And what people don't comprehend is that the UN is not necessarily sitting in New York. It's actually really kind of the other way around. The United States is the UN. We are the military arm of the UN. And it doesn't matter if you're just looking at some of the offices of government in D.C. or you're looking at your local county municipal offices. Because on December 9th of 1945, Congress, through the International Organization Immunities Act, relinquished all public offices of the United States to the United Nations. So all these guys running around, whether they're running around in their pirate patrol cars or whatever, they're all operating under the United Nations. And so, yes, this is all international, and the more and more you research and study, you find that we're actually dealing more with international law than even state or local laws.
It's really scary.
Yes, it is. And if anybody wants more info on that, you know, go into Tactical Sovereignty and just type in all government offices are empty, because they are. The de jure offices are sitting vacant, and everything is being run now by a de facto corporation.
And that's since March of 1861.
It actually goes back to 1945.
Now, it's farther back than that. The Republic went into lawful stasis, sine die, in March of 1861, was under a habeas-less, corpusless, running under Article 2, Section 3, Clause something or other. Article 2, I think it's Section 3, where the President has extraordinary, where the President on extraordinary occasions, and that term occasions is a proper noun, can either reconvene or adjourn Congress as he deems necessary. We've been there since March of 1861.
Yep, exactly. And, you know, that did happen with Congress. Congress convened sine die then. But, you know, everybody that wants to argue, and I was at a restaurant yesterday listening to people arguing about the election, and, you know, they need to go back to the Constitution and read Article 2. And you'll see that things that are being done now are not the way things were set up to be done. Was there another caller with a question there, Gatekeeper? I hope I answered your questions, Jody.
Yeah, thank you. I yield.
All right.
If anybody has a question, press *6 now. What I'm going to do, Brian, I'm going to open up the board here.
Okay.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put them on mute, but they can unmute themselves by pushing *6 then, okay? All right, so if anybody has a question, just press *6.
Yeah, I want to explain to everybody, too, that what we see operating right now is, you know, we've got all of these things called laws. They aren't laws, they're codes and statutes that actually have been cherry-picked from public law that was written by Congress. And all of these things, including the attorneys, they are all at law, all right? They aren't in law, they're only at law. The only people that can be in law is the people, we the people. And you see proof of that when you look at family relationships. You've got your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law, you know. We can be in law, but the foreign corporation cannot. They can only be at law.
If you ever see an attorney labeling or so-and-so attorney at law, attorneys can't be in law due to the restrictions of the Republican form of government. That's Article 9, Section 8, I think, Clause 3, if memory might be higher. But anyway, the titles of nobility are forbidden within the Constitution, and the first 13th Amendment, fully ratified by at least 1811 or so, because that was one of the causes of the War of 1812, was that they were that the Constitution amendment was forbidding attorneys from ever holding office. Between that and Madison's vetoing of the Second Bank of the United States was the reason why the Rothschilds sent the Redcoats over.
Yep, correct. And, so many of these guys, they want to down people, saying that, they're not allowed to represent themselves or another person or another human being, whatever, because they don't have a bar card. Well, actually, I would like to ask some of those attorneys or even that a court administrator, show me proof that you filled out your FARA information this year, your Foreign Agent Registration Act, because they're supposed to be filling those out. And none of them are. None of them are.
Yeah, no. Well, the corporation stuff itself isn't foreign to itself. It's a separate system altogether. Foreign to the land, yes. The courthouse downtown, as it pertains to the land, is a foreign vessel and dry dock. You get somebody from the land jurisdiction walking in there recognized, they don't want them in there because that basically puts them as the HNIC of the building. And they can't afford to have that. One guy is bad enough to have in that capacity. So I yield the floor with that.
Absolutely. So do we have any questions out there?
Can I ask another question regarding the at-law?
Okay.
So can you write on any forms then, if you want to make up any of your own forms for court, would we as a person, can we say we are at law on it, or do we say we are in law if we want to put our name on it?
I would use in law.
Yeah, so would I.
Okay.
At is corporation, in is land.
Okay, gotcha. Because I had someone tell me to do at law on a form, and I kind of questioned where they got that from, and I wasn't really sure of the origin, and lost contact with that person, but was wondering still. So thank you for clarifying.
Just like of is corporation, for is land.
Okay.
Constitution for the United States of America, as opposed to the Constitution of the United States of America.
And what did you say of meant?
Of is corporation.
Corporation. Okay, thank you.
For is land.
Gotcha. That's what we want.
Basically, it's of is water, for is land.
Okay.
Yeah. But keep in mind, water is a jurisdiction, not a literal situation like the law of the Sea Admiralty Maritime, which is under Vatican rule of the Holy SEE.
Right, and that's
so you're dealing with two different
law?
C's there. You got an SEAC and an SEEC.
Yeah,
and
I always wondered what
the Holy See belongs to the Vatican.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the maritime and admiralty is the same as navigation law. Would that be correct?
Yep.
Okay. And what exactly does that Holy See mean? SEE. What exactly does that
Vatican.
mean? Okay, that strictly just pertains to the Vatican.
Well, Vatican basically almost all but runs the planet. They use the Rothschilds as the banking slash law arm, for want of a better phrase, legal arm, and they do mostly the religious stuff under the Satanic Catholic Bible.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I just wasn't, exactly what C meant, and I was just kind of guessing that it was kind of like, there at the top of the pyramid with the eye, the all-seeing eye that they call God or whatever, and they got all their little cronies trickling down underneath them that are actually the ones gathering the information, putting it up to the one that thinks he, sees all, knows all, whatever. The de facto one.
Yeah.
Well, the Holy See, SEE, is one of the three hats that the Pope wears as well.
Where are the other two?
3 hats?
Well, the other two, go ahead.
I
What are the other two,
Pope
Brian?
3 hats.
I heard that. What was the young lady saying?
Yeah,
She's asking the same question I am. She wants to know the other two hats.
Oh. There's a canon law that it follows, and I don't have it sitting right here in front of me, so I don't want to take a guess at it. Go ahead.
And this is just on Wikipedia, but it may break down those three entities. The Holy See is the ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the Catholic Church in Rome, the Episcopal See of the Pope, and an independent sovereign entity. That was just the first line of that. It serves as a central point of reference of the Catholic Church. So I guess it's the Holy See is referencing the ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the Catholic Church, and then I guess I have to look up Episcopal See to understand with the Pope. The area of the bishop's ecclesiastical jurisdiction is the Episcopal See. So, anyways, I yield.
It's ecclesiastical, correct, which is the Latin, the jurisdiction of the Catholic Church in Rome. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so you're saying that Episcopal See is the Latin jurisdiction in Rome?
Well, it's a Latin word, yes.
No,
Okay,
the Episcopal See deals with the Pope. It's specifically, the usual meaning of the phrase is an area of the bishop's ecclesiastical jurisdiction. The Holy See, as in the SEE, deals with the ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the Catholic Church. So I'm guessing the Holy See deals with the ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the church, of the structure of the corporation of the church, where the Episcopal See covers the bishop's roles of the jurisdiction of the Pope, separating him, making him another corporate soul of the corporate soul. And I guess that those two together would make up the Holy See.
And when you're stating corporate soul, that's S-O-L-E, not S-O-U-L.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, got to make the distinction on that because all of this stuff is out of Satan's efforts, not Yahweh's.
What was the
Of course.
third one then? Was it canon law?
No, on Wikipedia, it didn't get into the canon. I think canon law is derivative of the ecclesiastical jurisdiction.
I was just going to say that. I thought they were basically the same thing.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I mean, I think they tend to use each other's, have the same meaning for, because I've heard ecclesiastical law and I've heard canon law. And I've heard canon law based off ecclesiastical law. So.
Okay, and what was that third thing about the soul?
I was just referencing the idea of a corporate soul or of a 508, which the Catholic Church is famous for propagating the idea of the corporate soul.
And that's S-O-L-E, not S-O-U-L, the soul within the living man or living woman body. Corporate soul is completely different entity.
Okay.
And creation of the Vatican itself.
Okay, and it's interesting. I recall when Bush 43 first became president, and after 9/11, that he and his wife actually attended an Episcopalian church service.
Well, yeah, and that's a branch off from Catholicism. All of these Protestant religions as well are all branches. They're all branches off from Catholicism because that's what they're protesting.
I know.
But
that was an eye opener when I discovered that.
And that is another hat of the Pope, is as the corporate soul of the Vatican. I mean, the Vatican is a nation state, and just as is Washington, D.C. It's its own nation state. And they're corporations. Yeah. And all corporations have a corporate soul, and he is the corporate soul for that corporation. And that's what they tricked everybody else into being. That is what the Certificate of Live Birth is all about. The Catholic Church promised eternal life to the people. And that was how eternal life was achieved. They turned you into a corporation, and they gave you a corporate soul. That corporate soul will last forever because it can't be killed off. It's a fiction.
Yeah.
All right. Which that's actually what we're doing is taking back control of that corporate soul that they gave us. The corporate soul is the straw man, whatever you want to name it.
Yeah. And I want to add to that the issue that there's two other city-states on the planet. The city of Westminster, also known as the city of London, also known as a square mile, within London itself, which used to be the ghetto until it burned, and the Rothschilds took it over, or the international bankers took it over, let me phrase it that way. And also D.C. is supposed to be a sovereign city all by itself. That's the reason why they've got a flag with three red stars on it with a white background, and the two red stripes indicating the three white stripes that you can't see.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's correct. And if you look, you look at the Washington flag, Washington D.C. It's got the three stars on it for the three city-states, and everything is combined in threes. It's just like your body. You've got mind, body, and spirit. All right. Well, there's three city-states running this world, and that's, as you mentioned, London, City of London, which is the financial arm. Okay. You've got the Vatican, which is the spiritual arm, and then number three, you've got the United States, which is Washington D.C., which is the military, the enforcement arm.
Yeah.
And what does the stripes represent? The stripes?
I haven't. Go ahead, Judge.
I didn't catch that. What'd she say?
What the stripes represent?
One white stripe for each city-state, as far as I'm concerned. It could come up with something else with the blood of their fake Christ. I don't know. With the two, because there's only two red stripes on the thing with three five-pointed stars.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to leave for this night. I've got another conference call in a few minutes, and I also want to get my dinner going.
There you go. Hey, thanks for joining in, Judge Johnson. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you for all your hard work, research, and everything else, finding things that I don't know where to look for. Appreciate you deeply.
No problem at all. You know, I'm essentially doing it one for myself. This is a spiritual journey, and people need to comprehend that.
Are you going to go do the Kolb depository with the Treasury of the United States in Puerto Rico too? You going to go after all that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yep. I'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
Talk to you all later. Thanks.
And, you know, everybody sees all these struggles going on in the world right now. And, you know, the situation with these 3D city-states lays right at the heart of the struggles that are happening. I'm hearing talk that you aren't going to see on the Internet, where there's a possible flip-flop between Russia and the United States, or America rather. Russia basically becoming what America has been, and vice versa. And if people remember seeing like the bombings and the problems in Brussels, there's a tug of war going on where they want the financial arm to be moved out of England and to be moved into Brussels. And that's what that was caused from. It was kind of the struggle between that and trying to ward off that occurring. Gatekeeper, do we have anybody else up there?
No, I have the board opened up, so if anybody wants to chime in, if I may, you just push *6 and you'll unmute yourself, or just push unmute on your cell phone and you'll be able to ask your question if there is any questions.
Yes, I had a quick question.
Go for it.
I remember one of the shows you guys were talking about birth certificate authentication.
Right.
And well, I have a kind of a basically I have a birth certificate from Mexico. You know, I was born in Mexico state, country, and then I was naturalized. So they actually, when I was younger than the age of 18, they actually gave me a Texas birth certificate with a different last name.
Interesting.
Yeah, through the naturalization process and stuff.
Yeah, and that was that corporate fiction that they were setting up for you.
Right, so right. And it has,
that's what I would recommend getting authenticated.
That one, right?
Correct.
Right. Because I was, I haven't done too much study into this, but then again, I don't want to, piss off any of the, probably the so-called government people, and have me get deported or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would really not see that happening. I mean, it's interesting to me at the different levels of dealing with these agencies, how things start to change, even when you look at the finances. Because when you look at receiving your certificate of live birth from various states, the prices may range from $30 to $100, and then when you look at getting it, like I know I was born on Michigan, for getting authenticated on Michigan, all of a sudden it's only $8 to get it authenticated. Well, it takes a lot less work to pull out that certificate of live birth and mail it to you than it does for an authentication. Because the authentication is validating the signatures, which may be multiple signatures on that certificate of live birth, and they have to validate that those were all in good standing at the time that those guys signed it. So that would be an entirely more arduous process, but they only charge $8 for that. And then when you're getting it done at the federal level, I think it's only $1 a page. $1 per certificate of live birth. So it's like it gets cheaper and cheaper as you get down to just dealing with the actual man instead of really the corporate fiction. It's like now you're starting to deal with the de jure government. You're dealing with the republic instead of the de facto corporation, and things are a lot less expensive. It's like we're going back to what things would have cost, in the 30s, early 30s, when this started happening to everybody through the birth certificate. I find that kind of fascinating. So, yeah. And when you send that off, get your naturalization papers authenticated as well at the same time.
Okay, like the whole citizenship stuff, because I went through the whole process there with the homeland and all that good stuff.
And, that's awesome. And I would say that you probably know more about this country than the average American knows. Because I think they throw more stuff at people that they have to learn through a class and everything than people are actually really even retained from their schooling here.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. I remember seeing a posting, something about not doing the WABEN whenever you do a application.
That's an application for the EIN number.
For EIN?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, what is the right way to fill out a job application? Because they always have you wanting to fill out the W-4, and I've heard that one is not the correct one to actually do.
Well, I haven't gone through that process yet to actually experience it, but I think from what I've read, we're really supposed to be filling out a W-9.
A W-9.
But then you're getting in a situation where, now you've got to educate your human resources department. And they're taught that you do it this way, this is the only way you do it, da-da-da, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then most people don't really like that. Yeah.
Nope. No, they don't.
I think if you actually fill out, like, if you try to get a job like at the city hall or something like that, it's more like a W-4 is the right way to go. Or I mean, because you become like a, government employee, right, or something?
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. I'll do a little bit more study on that because there's a lot of, different kind of points of views on that.
You know,
Okay.
and that may be where everybody got tripped up at too, as far as businesses went, because the businesses learn from City Hall what they're supposed to do, and City Hall says, well, this is what we had to do, so I guess this is what you have to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I've heard that people that actually have like government jobs are actually on welfare, kind of something like that, right? It's like a government job is kind of like welfare, or something like that.
Yeah, they're feeding off the productivity of the people.
Exactly. All right. Yeah, I'll check out that video because I think there was a lady that actually had a similar dilemma. I think she was from Canada, and then she had to get her birth certificate authenticated. I think it was a Canadian lady or something like that. I think it was like 2 weeks ago or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. I'll check out that video. Thank you very much.
You got it, brother.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
If anybody else has anything, just pipe up, either unmute your phone or hit *6.
Yeah, hey, this is Maryland, Pennsylvania and stuff. So I was hoping to jump back over to the issue with I guess we would call the marital estate, the marriage certificate. And one thing I did want to share with the naturalization, because Pennsylvania is kind of a little bit of an interesting, it's a commonwealth and then the state is over top it. And before I recognized how to get the recordations just done privately through the mail, and I took the time to go up to Harrisburg. And, the clerks there were nice enough, but it was interesting how I got diverted over to the state of Pennsylvania, where she asked, had I been naturalized? Had I taken an oath? And at the time, I didn't realize the beautiful nugget about that, because I'm like, well, I know I swore one nation under God, indivisible. And she's like, oh, no, I don't think you've been naturalized. I can't take any of your documents. It's not legal. And I'm like, well, legal's not the same thing as lawful. So I was still really getting my feet wet, because she's like, oh, no, you're absolutely right. And the point that I wanted to get at is that there's been a post about how to do the proper federal form to renounce your U.S. citizenship. And that is actually going to be, I think, a really critical step for those brothers and sisters that are truly employees of the corporate, that you did go through your little ceremony. As you know, you went through Homeland Security and that extra layer. And you did swear allegiance to, on a whole other pledge level, that those of us that have been just presumed to be don't have to do that additional. Well, actually, it's been recommended for all of us to make that announcement of revocation of election of the office of the person. But that would be, as you're doing that additional study, I find it fascinating they gave you, I'm not surprised, I just think it makes perfect sense they gave you a new name in addition to the Texan birth certificate. In other words, exactly, that was the vessel they set up for you. So definitely that's what's the depository aspect of, to go get control of. But it just would be interesting as you're gathering up all those original paperworks under the baby defense of what you're going to say, I didn't know, it was done in infancy. That would be one of those where I think it's going to be an additional step for those folks that are Canadian or Mexican or whatever else here and actually have taken an oath to be an employee, are going to need that additional step. And that's what I wanted to kind of tie in with the marital estate, because my mess is a little bit complex, and of course everyone's got, particulars. So I'm trying to figure out how to effectively divorce from the state versus gain control of the operating entity. It's a real simple procedure to just file on paper the quote-unquote all caps entities, hereby divorce. You make the filing, you sign, I guess, as the agent for that all caps. It takes about, a couple months, nothing contested, no property to split, whatever is required, and then it's signed off on. And in a certain regard, because I would prefer not to have the state of Maryland involved in my private business, I'm preferential to that route. But there was a discussion earlier about a better option, or I guess an alternative, whereby it was go get and I'm presuming it would be the license when they're discussing it as the mayor's certificate from the county, and get that authenticated. And then I'm wondering, well, if it's authenticated and they are possessing, hold in due course, is that then another DBA process?
I wouldn't think it's another DBA process. I mean, because what you're doing is currently they are holding the legal title to that new entity which was created, which was a union of two people, all right, which gives them ownership over anything that develops from those two people, such as children.
That's the thing, is the products from, and that's the main reason why I want the dissolution of that business in terms of the interests of the state.
Right, and the authentication process actually turns that into as good as original, as good as the original. So then your next step, and it's the same for people with your certificate of live birth when you're sending these notices out, is that you're sending these out in an affidavit form as a counter deed, okay? And a counter deed is saying, hey, I hold the original, I'm the holder in due course with superior claim now, you are not. And being an affidavit form, they've got X amount of time to rebut that. And unrebutted, it stands as truth and equity.
Okay, so let me repeat this back if I'm hearing it correctly. So get the certificate authenticated, state and federal level. Then it would be a miscellaneous record in terms of a counter deed to declare that I am the sole possessor of this entity.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're the holder in due course of the title.
Holder in due course of the title. Thank you. And
well,
that
it's just like if I went over.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh no. Okay, I was going to ask. Is that more accepted done in terms of, like I said, a land records miscellaneous filing, or a publish in a legal notice as of a newspaper?
I would say publish in a paper is a great route to go in, but also into land records. People have found that the Land Court of Lamar, Georgia, is still in the de jure as one of the original 13 colonies. Okay.
Yes. No, believe me, I think we're going to end up doing the Lamar, Georgia recordings. Oh, they're loving all the. I saw their schedule. They're loving all the business, but you know what? That's great. If that's what the Land Court was established for because of its colonial ties, same thing why I filed in Delaware in terms of court of equity. Delaware's equity court and Georgia's land court existed prior to, and that's exactly why we have to recognize they were functioning as we were the Confederacy, simply in that intercourse aspect in order to properly do business and set the titles in their proper form. So I have no problem if that's how Lamar County keeps looking to chug away at this point with, those filings aspects. I just was wondering if it's the gentleman always provides notice, if it's something of a make an announcement in the newspaper with a, send a rebuttal to a notary witness. And then obviously, like you said, 60 days goes by, nobody, kind of speak now, forever hold your peace, nothing happens. Then the notary would have a simple affidavit. Nope, I didn't get any protest.
Yep, absolutely.
And then that would be the affidavit that would be a part and parcel with the evidence of the publication notice.
Right. And I also recommend to people to get it filed in the land courts of the county, if not where you were born at least where you live at. Get it filed into the land courts there. or
Right.
into the land records.
Right, right. And so that was just trying to figure out, I'm like, okay, I'm presuming in terms of the counter deed, that would be as far as the land records and miscellaneous filing. Okay. Okay, and then that would set up the operating, because that would obviously be clearly then the whole point is saying that the products of the marriage belong within the private trust. Again, it's not the state's property. For dealing with the agencies, the most infamous in regards to just because it's like a hydra, you deal with one office and then another one pops up. With the IRS aspect, in terms of the transmitting utility account versus, so there's the asterisk on either side, which is the, I don't have a problem of a conditional acceptance. Oh, hey, thank you for your correspondence, and sure, no problem, under usufruct, access, accepted through the transmitting utility account. Has anyone found if this is a process whereby it's best to deal with the claims as they come in per se, or if it's a put the IRS on notice as soon as you've authenticated and done your DBA and do a revocation of election with them? Because again, it's trying to figure out how do we peacefully deal with these agencies to not be construed as quote-unquote dangerous or belligerent.
Well, yeah, I would include in with my notice that, you're coming forward with clean hands and equity, and not as a hostile enemy combatant,
Yeah.
as we know FDR labeled the citizen to be in 33. You're just declaring, who you are and what you're invoking to be done.
Right, and it's just trying to figure out if the process has deemed to have been better, where it's a stand upon the revocation of election and then post the notice as this is the final filing, and effectively this entity is deceased. That's what the authentication process is about. And post it over in the packet with the, I know, in other words, is it better form, I guess, I'm asking, I do not consent, which is partly where I'm like, I wonder if that gets taken as belligerent, versus a conditional acceptance. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to prove it, and then, of course, they're going to be in default because they can't prove it, particularly under, like, Title 83. I mean, there's so many beautiful statutes that show American nationals are not a taxpayer class. And once the birth certificate's been authenticated and the name change shows, hey, I'm in upper lower, that's in all caps, that's a fictitious entity, and I'm no longer acting as agent for service of process. And, since the correction of status process leads to that, they're left with the inability, it seems, to rebut. So it would just simply stand as the, okay, I'll accept you on these conditions, please prove your claim. And then the proof of claim fails. And so then they're in default, and then all of that paperwork will show, hey, no problem, access to the transmitting utility account, whatever claims you need, and then, you just can't come to me, the living, to try to do garnishments or some such silliness, because now that's a case of mistaken identity.
Right, yeah, if you've got a living man that can come to me, the living man or woman, exactly, and I totally agree that the conditional acceptance offer is the best route to take.
Okay.
Because,
I was leaning towards that as opposed to a revocation because, I don't know, Homeland Security. I just don't want to be a perceived belligerent.
Well, you could do the revocation of election in the form of a offer of conditional acceptance. See, the problem is that for them to fulfill like a conditional acceptance, or for them to rebut an affidavit, they're going to have to expose this whole can of worms that they've put everybody into, and they're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that, right.
Number one, because whoever receives this at whatever office is going to take this to their boss, and their boss is going to say, you know what, just leave that with me and I'll take care of it. And as the secretary is walking out, he's wadding it up and pitching it into his trash can that he practices his basketball with.
Right. Right, and it was just trying to figure out, because I just looked up, I think there's like 10 offices. And so we just provided, they gave us the coupon with the asterisk on either side, so we gave them the gracious out. We've already got our postage usufruct and stuff. I'm like, no problem. We've already alerted the Treasury. Everything's been already transmitted to us in theory. Like, hey, here it is. It's all over in your hands. You can administer it as far as if there's anything left over that, while in infancy. Because it's really interesting how, of course, they take the liberty to do a purported return on your behalf. Lovely case of who's the your. And that was basically what ended up happening in a letter stating that a return was filed in 2015 on your behalf of this marital estate. I'm going, well, honey, I didn't file anything. And my Brian is like, oh, I didn't file anything. Okay. So we're like, okay, no problem. Whatever was filed, here you go. And so just now another office in another state. So we just dealt with Utah, and I think this one's Arizona. I'll have to go double check. And I'm just wondering whether or not there's like a head that can be given the overarching authority as opposed to all these variety of offices. I mean, the basic premise I'm going to do is just copy, hey, we did this over here, giving you the same courtesy, not a problem, and, conditional acceptance so long as you can prove the following, that, if it hasn't been reconciled. Please provide affidavit, evidence and so forth of what further instructions are needed. And then presuming that 60 days is going to go by, and then send them a letter. Okay, well, we're going to presume that, you haven't responded, so silence is acquiescence. We consider this matter closed. And I can just see this happening every 90 days, and I'm just trying to figure out how best to shut the death by 1,000 paper cuts from this bureaucracy.
Well, and you know what? I would really hope that everybody that's following along with us with this and doesn't just sit back and wait to see some results from us, because, the results may be you may never hear from us again.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Because I've spoke with, if I mention the name, everybody would know who it is, so trust me, it is a very good authority. I spoke with him on the same thing, and I said, what do you think is going to happen? And he just looked at me, and I said, what, non-disclosure? He said, exactly.
Yeah.
I said, that's why we're not hearing from the people who have already done this. Exactly. That's why we are all having to tread these waters on our own. And so I would hope that everybody follows along with what we're doing, and, send your notices out to all these alphabet agencies that you can find, because, we'll know we've struck gold when one of them responds back in some way, letting us know that your position is comprehended and accepted. Done deal. Then we'll know, okay, that is where it has to go to, And, when I first started researching this info, I'll tell you, I spent more time digging than I did reading anything. Just digging and looking and looking and looking. And that's why I started the group. So there'd be one spot, people could use the search bar, they could pull up information and stuff that's been found. And that way it'd be so much easier for anybody that's stumbling around looking, they run into the group, boom, they found a site where they'll have access to the resources for this information. And I appreciate all the people that really are, 99% of the people that are working on this and doing this, I never hear anything from. I only hear back from about 2%. And I know that because I see things posted and done other places where I know exactly where that information came from. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's people really working on this and following along, and I appreciate those people. I appreciate people that are donating to this cause, because it does take an amount of energy and expense to get this message put out there for everybody. And I'd love that these are done on YouTubes, because people will be able to go back and listen to them later on and maybe fill in some of the gaps of things that they're missing, you know?
Well, that's what I'm hoping, because it really, just in the hammering home about that process, it, you know, because when somebody had mentioned about going back on the name change, and you guys, you did, you brought it back, it's the fact of getting away from the presumption of operating the all caps. And even if it was done within the context of the judge dismissing the claim, saying, hey, that's your name, you can use it, that's the decree that they can use right there. Even
Absolutely.
the dismissal of, hey, you don't need to file anything else, it's already yours. You
Exactly.
know, and if that little request for a transcript gets put in and said, hey, here's the authority, it's just a reference to. I mean, we all know this inherently, but the point is to create the prima facie, the evidence-based, through the actions, the deeds, the things done, of providing notice according to what's been laid down, that you have to authenticate that you're the holder in due course. You have to recognize that the all caps is a fictitious name for doing business, and so that has to be put in the record as a recognition, as a notice, if not a registration, that this is a fictitious name for doing business. This is not my name. And then you have to ultimately get the service mark, and then you have to copyright to protect it. And all of that should allow the man or woman to go to probate and show without a doubt with the registration, with the exhibit of the Bible signed. Well, I mean, I think I like that process of, here's my father's will, I've signed and accepted it, and I'm here to claim the infant decedent estate, return of the heir. You know, and at that point it should be taken under advisement by that judge to get that last decree that is real, you know, and signed, sealed, delivered. You should be looking for the gold medallion at the Federal Reserve. And you're right, it should be a non-compete clause. It should be a non-anything, you know, that it's your, you know, rapture moment. It's the debts are wiped clean, the system's wiped clean, and then it's going back in the 30 days with a duplicate title and transfer. What I've seen on the driver's license is the front remains the same with the, you know, picture and so, but the back is completely blank. What I've seen with the Social Security is that the dashes are removed and you have the asterisk on either side as far as the celestial body. And what I've seen on the final seals on the birth certificate, once it's becoming a certificated instrument, is that it's given that medallion where the bank will then deposit it as a special deposit with that private agreement that is going to operate as a liaison to where you have your card for purchasing and so forth, for having your 2D instrumentality set up, you know, because you're a 3D. How else are you going to interact? You need all that put together. And this is the process.
Exactly, yeah. You're correct. And I hear people come back, sorry, like you had mentioned, you know, the judge saying, well, you don't need to do this, that is your name. To me, those are the most beautiful words to hear, because you say, okay, can I have that in writing?
Yes, exactly.
And you're done. And you're done.
Exactly. You either get the judge to just write it up real quickly, or, you know, it's sometimes been a pull a transcript.
Oh, shoot, already have it typed up yourself and ready for him to sign. Okay.
If you're there already, honestly, if you're ready for the, absolutely, no, seriously, if anyone has done battle, for lack of a better way to put it, but worked with the lawyers, then the first thing that has been hopefully observed is that the good lawyer will have the order already written up to say, hey, judge, as we were looking to get to this party agreement, I've already done the order, all I need is your signature. That's a beautiful way to approach it.
Because if anybody's ever had to go to court, you spend, and maybe you lose or you think you had lost, you spend the next however many weeks going, God, I should have done this, I should have done that, I should have done that, I should have been prepared. You know, and what people need to do is they need to think ahead. Okay, just don't go in there blindly. Think, okay, I'm going in for a name change decree, and I'm going to cross my fingers. Don't do that. You go in there thinking, for instance, well, if he does say, oh, that is your name, you know, you don't need a change done, you're already prepared.
Have that.
You know?
Exactly. No, it's the method for the name change that I feel very fortunate have mother and father still here. So we had a will and testament drawn up where he said, I will the name and give the property of the birth certificate so that the name is possessed wholly. It was signed as far as thumbprinted with the quorum, notarized, and then that's getting authenticated. And then I did the legal posting down here in our lovely Washington Post, so that was put in the newspaper. And then the third party, as far as notary witness, nobody's rebutted it. And so that package is going to go together to simply be as far as a recognition of that this was my name and this is why it was set up to do business as far as separate with the all caps. In other words, the whole thing is to show intent that I got this, Pops. I can have the keys to the Maserati because I understand now what I got to do. And you're very right. It's all about having that prepared. You're setting up how to run your business accordingly.
And, you know, I try to keep stuff thrown into the group occasionally of things that I've done or am doing and the results of it. And, you know, if you've got info too, is it Monica or Marie?
Yeah. Do you want me to post it as far as on the Matrexit? Because if this will be helpful to start, I'll give the copy. I think I was sending stuff to Audra and stuff to Andrew. Because I'm like, guys, you need to vet this first. But I'll be fine as far as like, hey, here's the particulars of mine. I'm not saying follow me because your unique situation and your path has got to be what you know to be true for you. But yes, absolutely, in the same way that when Brian posted about the copyright, those things are so helpful. Like I said the one time, it's how does the peg go in the slot? Just how does this one thing get done?
And that's why I recommend, I mean, throw it in Matrexit and the Skype, but throw it into Tactical Sovereignty if you would like as well.
Or over to Tactical, is that where you, absolutely then. Then I'll
because
run it,
there's over 3,400 people there, and I'm adding people, even as we're speaking right now, I'm adding people to the group. I'm getting requests.
I'll port it over to Tactical, because, and believe me,
people can visualize.
It is. It really is. It's just a kind of learning aspect that this is a classroom. And I know, I speak from personal, I am a visual learner. My auditory is my weakest. So if I see somebody that can show me the example of, oh, okay, now I can understand how this block fits together with that piece for my situation. You know, it's not a copycat, but it's that I can understand the why that this is done this way. And it's a beautiful mirror parallel to the process of what we went and did for setting up an LLC. I mean, it's absolutely the same in terms of setting up how to run a business, but the beauty is it's a service. Oh, my gosh, when they unlock that key, that it's getting the service mark in Class 45, straight out of and 45.
One of the things, too, that I think people need to comprehend because they probably don't think it through, like when they read the definition of a counter deed, is that you aren't just taking the title of ownership out of the hands of the government, but you are also removing any attachments that have ever been made to that title.
No, pro-tunk,
Because you will probably, and I've heard this from many people who have done it, that they've gone back into their local courts and said, hey, you know, I want to check on a case that I had last year. You know what I mean? I want to make sure that it's all cleared up. And then the clerk is going back going, well, I'm sorry, but your records have been destroyed, which is part of the definition of a counter deed.
Correct.
Because all of those things they did trying to, you know, attach fines or fees or levies to that entity were done in fraud, and so they have to go away.
Right. They're intermeddling in the affairs of an infant estate. They're coming in with unclean hands because they're trying to obviously evade the tax liability. Boris laid out a really good case for that. It's just that until we come into proper status, we do not know how to peacefully move the court to get that, like you said, that counter deed, that destruction, that reconciliation, that zeroing, that removal of the debts, that that washing clean. And yes, that's exactly how I've heard it done. In fact, it's interesting in the halfway out, and that because of having, unfortunately, some cases that brought me to a little bit more fire in the belly to get it done, that it is now showing as converted type. So I'm not raptured, but I'm converted. So it's getting there. And it just has to be as far as officially decreed through probate. So I just need those final steps. And I just wanted to make sure that, because with Pennsylvania being such a critical linchpin in the history of this country, they've got really a lovely forthright system with their documents about the assigning the name, fictitious as well as the service mark. And so it was just wanting to make sure that not just blindly filling out those forms, but in accordance with. And then, they're set up beautifully in the county to do the miscellaneous land records. So everything's there that I should be able to then have all those deeds, all that packeted and so forth, to be able to then direct the judge accordingly.
I want to ask you something about your experience there in Pennsylvania. You were talking about something transferred from the Commonwealth to the state of.
Yes, that was fascinating. Yes.
And that they had mentioned something about taking an oath.
Yes.
As far as the citizenship.
Exactly. When I spoke to the state of Pennsylvania, the lady that was representing the state of Pennsylvania, she couldn't take the documents. Again, I will admit to commingling potentially, because the goal is to recognize in so many things about this system is private stays private. You know, if you're in the public, you are recognizing the peaceful element of the overall situation. And there's no need to really engage in anything other than a real pleasant demeanor. So it's, okay, I did have some questions. I figured let me go ahead and talk to the clerks and so forth. But I brought my documents on the possibility that I might be able, just with a demand record, to go do so. They had a problem seeing the birth certificate there. And when I had mentioned I had started the process with the notice of use of fruction and so forth in Delaware, they said, well, you probably don't want to break your chain of title, keep all the records there, and just bring the acceptance and reconveyance to here. But if you have a few more questions, I know somebody, and let you go talk to her. So I went from the Commonwealth side over to the state, and that's where I had my interesting conversation about not being naturalized. And when you look up the definition of being killed, be made into a person in taking that oath, that was a really good thing to find out. Because she's like, I can't accept the documents. These aren't legal. There's not proper cover. I said, okay. And she's like, and do you, have the evidence of the oath that you swore, and that's when I refer to my little Pledge of Allegiance, and I was like, well, I'm a nation under God, indivisible, And she's like, oh no, no, not that ceremony. So that's why, yes, I really wanted to pound home the state of the naturalization process, the U.S. person, the U.S. citizenship process, is a completely foreign to the de jure, to the American national, to the natives that we all are being born on the soil. And that's the real crux of why we correct these records.
Yeah, that's something that, it struck me the other day. I was talking to a girl at work who, she was dealing with another franchise that deals with our company, and they wanted to see more paperwork from her. And she said, I was telling them, I'm a U.S. citizen. Believe me, I'm a U.S. citizen. And I stopped the girl and I said, you are? I said, have you ever taken an oath?
Exactly.
Have you ever taken an oath to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States against all powers, foreign and domestic? And she just looked at me. And I think a lot of people claim to be U.S. citizens, but it's like, wait a minute, when did you take an oath?
Right.
Show proof, and even ask the corporation, show me proof that I am a U.S. citizen. It doesn't matter where I was born. Show me actual proof that I have accepted the position of U.S. citizen.
speaking of, another fascinating tidbit that I know Pennsylvania makes a big deal of, and I would encourage any former military to include their DS, I think it's 214, which is the removal, because thank you, tax stars, very much. I was government property. I did, in that regard, choose to serve. And that element is allowed to be put forth in the public record, as that is no longer an affiliate, like a franchise, like an element of. And Pennsylvania does make sure that those men and women that really intend to go fully private, that's specifically an express service, is the separation from the military. And I thought that was a really good aspect.
I think that form of DS-14 is important, and that is a form of a revocation as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Yes, it's all about recognizing you are not military, you are not a civilian employee, you're not a U.S. citizen.
Now, I've never found it, but I have heard it mentioned a few times of looking up the population of America or the United States, and then looking up the total amount of people in the military of the United States, and that they're equal. They're the same amount of people. I haven't gone and researched that.
That would make sense. Again, it's possibly buried in another DS-style form. But I know one of my spiritual sisters that she's kind of struggling because, working with the IRS, she's like, I have to be a U.S. citizen. And I said, Crystal. So with that discussion, I believe that there is, like I said, it's not quote-unquote like styled as a military docket and jacket, but it's in there in terms of upon taking employment, and it's a swearing that you are a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Boris as well, because I highly recommend everybody to go to IamSomeDude.com. Use the search bar. Just put in little keywords. There is tons of information in there. I know here, a year and a half or so ago, there was like maybe 130 posts to it. I think there's over 2,000 now.
Now he's a really brilliant base of foundational elements between recognizing Libra code and the decedent to infant estate, claims in a nutshell. It's amazing what he's been able to put together. And it was his work with Eddie and forgetting the other, first Gathering of the Tribes was that
and
first
Jim.
kind of, yes, and Jim, thank you, Jim Heaven, that it was kind of then coming in from peaceful inhabitants and then kind of over to KW with the agency understanding and agent for service process, and then finally as far as with Jane and Josie and Triel with the process of how to really understand how to put it all together to remove the presumption of the personhood.
And, I want everybody to comprehend also and realize the fact that, like, when I recommend Boris's info or Jim and them, that this isn't just stuff I stumbled on the internet that jived with what I was believing. These are people that I have actually met. I've stayed at their homes. I know these guys. They're 100% what they say is what they are.
Yeah.
What they're doing is what they are. And I'm not just some fat 50-year-old sitting in my mom's basement on the computer in my underwear yelling for another Diet Coke, sitting here trolling along and trying to throw out BS info to everybody. This is real stuff. This is real stuff,
No, they
guys.
figured out the hospital connection. They figured out the Wells Fargo suing Wells Fargo with the house situation. It was brilliant.
Yeah. I've been to court myself. I've had a 15-year felony on me that took a year to take care of. And I walked out of there without one string attached to me. When I walked out, the judge said, "Get out of my courtroom."
There you go.
So this is stuff that we're not necessarily just guessing at. We've all gone through this stuff. And these are the people that, this is the kind of people you need to be listening to. People who have gone through it and people who are doing it and have done it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, they are showing this is how the system works. And I will totally concur. My traffic case, because I'd already put in certain documents, but I got labeled as lukewarm, as I call it, is called no correct address. I cannot make this stuff up. I mean, look at my case search. It says no correct address. It's true. My name's not changed yet. I don't have my degree yet. It's showing in there as converted type. In the meantime, I had to be okay, labeled as incompetent, because I cannot reconcile the estate yet. I cannot fully manage. They're still adhesed. It's okay. And it's how the system works. It's okay. They're just operating as if the estate's been abandoned, and they're going to administer it accordingly. And so it's our job to correct that record.
Yeah, and then they just need a man to come up and be surety for that estate.
Oh, believe me, that was a huge surprise that from the name aspect, speaking of like going back to the gentleman when he got a new name, yeah, that I didn't realize that they would just go and make up a name and stick it on you and say, well, that's you now. And it really is true when some folks have gone and mentioned the misspellings are not mistakes. Well, okay, they're mistakes in the sense of
they've mistaken, they wrongfully taken.
They're wrongfully taken. They are very purposefully done. To have made the name Patrick is not a misspelling on a keyboard. Oops. To have put that in the record in the manner that they did was very purposely done, because they could no longer charge, no longer having the business entity that was registered in Maryland properly as the McGinley, Monica, Patricia, all caps. So yeah, that was very purposefully done, but a good learning experience.
And they give these keys to the people who watch TV. I haven't turned on a TV in well over a year and a half or so I'm probably going to date myself here. But they have to let everybody know what they're doing. And they can't do this stuff. I mean, it's hard to keep a secret. And so their little secrets seep out on TV. If people remember the episode with Breaking Bad, where they needed a guy to take a fall for another crime. And so they found this guy that that's all he does, is he does jail time. He's lived in jail ever since he was a kid, and that's all he knew. And that's what he does. For a price, he will come up and take a fall. He'll stand up and be surety for that name, and he'll take the fall and go spend the 5 years. Hey, he just made, $250,000. You don't care.
There you go.
Because that's where he lives at anyways, is in prison. All he knows is he's going to have a $250,000 commissary now.
Exactly. And that I think is a brilliant gimme. That here, this is in your face. This is how we're operating. Yeah, it was very surreal to see all the posters regarding human trafficking.
Oh my Lord! All this stuff with human trafficking and all this stuff the past few years with identity theft that they're doing just blows my mind, because
it does.
That's what they're doing, is identity
theft. That's exactly what they're doing. Yes, and it was the publication from the Department of Justice regarding how birth certificates are breeder documents, and it was the beginning abstract, I think on like page 9, and it says 100% of federal imprisonment cases are based on identity theft. 100%. In other words, every single one of those men and women in there for a federal crime are abused of their all caps person, and it's just simply because they weren't able to properly show that they were not surety. Yeah. And then
And what happens many times when these guys go to prison, even at the state level, not even federal, is that within the first month or so of being there, while they're in their processing stage still, they'll be called out and say, hey, you want little extras while you're in here? We need you to fill out some forms. And they'll fill out forms for 10 extra Social Security numbers.
Yes.
So now there's 10 extra Social Security numbers floating around out there, which are all brand new estates that now they can throw these GSA bonds and stuff on and make more money off them.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that contracting element, that was the inside, that was the joke I was having with the women. Like, oh, this is a place of business. Oh, ha ha. For the dress code stuff. Yeah, it's a fascinating behind the scenes look to have been given in that regard. I was surprised to have been labeled dangerous. I didn't think that was the way it was going to end up being misconstrued, as opposed to just simply handed a piece of paper to administrate accordingly and peacefully. But it's okay that they decided to escalate it the way they did, and then it really kind of allows me to see that more clearly now. So,
right, and when you're in and when you're in court, people need to understand all court is. It's not you standing there saying whatever. Court actually is all just paperwork.
It is.
It's a paperwork shuffle between, prosecution, defense, or between you and the court administrator. That's all it is, and everything should be just strictly done in writing. That's it. Keep your mouth shut. Like Carl says, the biggest problem people have is that they've got a throat attached to their tongue, and they won't keep their mouth shut.
Yeah.
And
no, I think there's a passage about convicted by their own mouth, probably some Proverbs or something. No, absolutely. It is there to do process, as in meat processing. So unless it's simply a matter of, do you see what's been filed and then concur, okay, then you're going to dismiss, okay, you're getting the agreement.
That's what I stand on.
Because you're
you see my paperwork?
That's what you're standing on. Yeah.
That's
You're
what I stand
there
on.
to administer the estate, and that's it. And you're just simply making sure that judge concurs.
What are people told in the Miranda warning when they're arrested?
Yeah, exactly.
They're told you have the right to remain silent. Okay. Do you think that right to remain silent, you think that Miranda warning only lasts up until the point that they take you out of the vehicle and you go into processing for jail? No. That stands always. You always have that Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, because everything you say can and will be used against you.
Absolutely.
So you keep your mouth silent all the way through everything. Don't say a word. And when you have to deal with the court administrator, you do it on paper.
Absolutely.
Period. I need something to write on. Why do you think that it seems like, especially in bigger municipalities now, when people go to their first appearance after they've been arrested, they're in their orange jumpsuit, and they see the court administrator on a TV screen up above their head, and that's how they convey.
Right. That's why they're doing it. They were not going to allow the ability for there to be any any exchange. And when I tried to simply say that this name wasn't correct and that's okay, I'll accept agent to service a process in order to peacefully administrate, it was just like a hustle off the screen. And, oh, no, we're not going to, yeah, it was very much done on that basis to create the inability to peacefully settle from a dismissal aspect, unfortunately. And you're right, it's very much the bigger municipalities. It's very much more those areas like mine that are clearly much more urbanized than rural and suburban now. Yeah.
And there's a maximum of law that says similar is not the same. So I'm sorry, that court administrator you see on a TV screen up there is not the same as a court administrator.
That's true.
It's just like they want to show you copies of stuff in court. Right. Well, that looks similar, but similar is not the same. Do you have the original?
Yeah, you can't even declare, I want safe harbor, right, because you're not in a position to have been properly docked. You're still floating. You're just an image. There's a whole other layer of separation. It's like the Zen finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. Absolutely. Very, very similar.
And that's one of the things I claimed on my natural identification that I carry on me. That's the only thing I carry on me. And that's one of the things I declared was safe harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Safe harbor, innocent passage, and quiet enjoyment.
Exactly. That's really all that's needed. That's all that's requested. And then it's a recognition of, okay, here's my declaration, but then you need to make sure that your officer, your Secretary of State, your administrators have been properly notified of my declarations. And so that's where I didn't mind that it was having to go beyond my notice and declarations that I had done, and then, posted not in commerce, private property, created the trust, and so it was common law at the time. But it's okay. It wasn't sufficient. It wasn't paramount claim. That's okay. It's all good. Like I said, I was surprised, trying to be peaceful, still ended up where the gentleman thought he would have a conversation with, using a billy club. But that's the training. That really is the tide shift, unfortunately, of what's happening with the production of that mindset coming back from the Iraq and Afghanistan fields. And this is also by design, that those men and women that are returning home and then now employed as the policy enforcers are unfortunately now so much more traumatized and trigger happy. By design. So it is, to me, even more of a reason that we do not rely on, here's my Bible. I don't have any other identification, I can't give you what I don't have. There's no ability, really, to have a peaceful conversation in regards to not contracting in their presence. They will simply call back up. They have no problem carjacking and shanghaiing, bagging, tagging, planting things on you and making claims because it's all currency generation. So it's much more of a building better walls in the beginning.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're teaching.
Yes, absolutely.
How to put those roadblocks up ahead of time. These are all preventative measures.
It does. It really does. It's gone are the days where we think we can actually have a conversation. The newer crop, I think if you're dealing with somebody who's 40 and older, you can still have a conversation. Because when I was having difficulty getting the tags to get into the trust, that was a that was a problem on my part for titling and so forth. So there was the Virginia on the front, they had the where it was stickered on the front, but they had the Maryland temp tag still. And we were going down to Thanksgiving at my sister's in Virginia as a caravan, and I'm the middle car, and the police car cuts me off and slams on the brakes. I gotta swerve around. And he tried to make the claim as if I was speeding when I'm following a car in front of me who's clearly not, but I was the one that looked out of place. It's okay. And then it was trying to create that my attempt to avoid hitting him was considered reckless. But fortunately, with just conversation and explaining that the documents, the expired passport that I had at the time, this is not me. This is just simply as far as a process to recognize that, hey, we're traveling from point A to point B. Those Commonwealth men, they were fine. In fact, they even made mention, hey, just put your search number on the ticket. I said, I don't know, I'll just administrate it accordingly. But the newer, the younger, the 20s, the 30s, the folks that are coming in indoctrinated now, and particularly if they're coming from military previously, are not going to want to do anything other than, put your hands up and then do a gut punch and then claim that you threatened them by moving your hands down. So it really is a necessary process to build better protections beforehand.
Yeah, build better protections, and that's one of the things I want people to realize as well, is that when you're dealing with officers on the side of the road or whatever, you know, you be as congenial and friendly and nice as you can be. You don't try and educate them. That's not going to happen, because these guys have been just as indoctrinated, if not worse, than everybody else.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to get anywhere with them. But if you have these roadblocks set up ahead of time, like I've had, my last 8 stops have ran smoothly with no ticket or anything.
There you go.
Because every stop, they're just trying to escalate things into something further. And with me, they didn't even nail me on the small whatever that they wanted to nail me for. Because I already had these little protections already set in place.
Exactly. And that's good. That's good. I'll look further through tactical sovereignty. I'm glad that that's getting posted for now a good 3,000 of our brothers and sisters, and hopefully more as we're reaching in terms of through Lighthouse and other affinities and affiliations, because it really is trying to get that education out that, we are finally to this web part where ignorance is a choice, and we don't need to be ignorant under the law any further. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for answering the questions on the marriage certificate. I appreciate that.
Hey, absolutely, Marie. Let's see if we've got anybody else on here, because we're already going on over a couple hours. So, does anybody else have anything to offer or a question?
I have a quick question again, if I may.
Okay. Who's this?
This is Brian, with an I. Could you talk a little bit about the Treasury, public versus private, D.C. versus Puerto Rico, as far as, because I think my understanding, some maybe a little bit older, I think maybe that's why I went through D.C., so maybe could you shine a little clarity on the private side, Puerto Rico, Treasury?
Well, I haven't looked into it greatly, but there's the private side of the Treasury, public side of the Treasury. Public side is Jacob Blue. Okay, a lot of people sent stuff to Jacob Blue and had no success. It's because they're actually trying to operate in the private, and they're trying to do a private administration process, and which would have been Rosa Rios' office, and which now we know, I think July 12th or something like that, she resigned or has put in her resignation. She's leaving that position. Maybe there's too many of us starting to come through to her. I don't know, getting overworked. Who knows?
No, I mean, I think you talked about I Am Some Dude and some of the work that Boris did, and I think I was commingling the public and private and corresponding with Jacob Blue. And I think the clarification, even on the I Am Some Dude, is not to address the Rosie Rios personally, but her office of Treasurer or Secretary of Treasury. That title, that title, because we have, too many of us may have addressed her personally, which would have caused her too much liability, forcing her to step away. You see what I'm saying? They may be adjusting that, but it's good that you bring up. It's funny, even looking at my path of studying different styles. It's funny, the ones that I'm gravitating towards are all coming together. They're all looping through, studying similar paths. So I think what we're all doing is incorporating that in our process forward, and fine-tuning our way of untangling.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what we're doing. We're fine-tuning the things that other people have found but not done anything with yet.
Yeah.
And I believe they've got now. what they have in Puerto Rico is actually, I believe it's referred to as the service department.
Service department?
For the Treasury, for the IRS.
Treasury. Okay. All right.
And,
yeah, because I think I think on my own, I think I wrote a letter to Lou and tried to assign the use of RUC under 1295A2 and 31 USC 3113, I believe, and I think Libra Code. And I structured my little one-page letter with my birth certificate, but at that time it wasn't authenticated. So I hadn't heard back from anything, but, I sent it registered mail, return receipt, and it's sent there, so I don't know what they did with it. I didn't get a response from it, but I haven't noticed anything on the public side dropping off, so.
All right. Yeah, that's probably because it needed to go to the private side of the Treasury. And it needed to be the authenticated certificate of live birth as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, adjust and move on.
Right, exactly. Because you're doing something with somebody else's property, and you can't. You can only do stuff with your own property.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to give them, at the time I was like, I'm just trying to give you back your property, but I'm still not realizing what's mine is mine, and it's almost that white flag. I'll exchange my white flag for that safe harbor, the quiet enjoyment. It's like, I want to properly give you your stuff back. I know I had no part in this. Not worried about all this black card and, Maseratis and all that. I was like, I just want to make sure you guys got yours and it's good, and I just want my stuff is mine, and we can go on our way.
Maybe in the next week or two, I can convince Boris to come on one of these calls, and everybody can take a handful of Xanax and some headache medicine ahead of time, so they can absorb what he has to offer.
Oh, I mean, he is such a wealth, and his patience is for the silly questions. He understands it so well. But for many of us, sometimes we have to go over it and let sit with it for it to fully sink in. But once you get it and once you start to know it, you're like, okay, wait a minute. Add this on to top of that. It's all fiction, and they're using fictional language, and it's not even my property, and it's all under Libra Code, and it's all military, and this is my code check. It just adds more knowledge to the armor, of studying these methods and you becoming one with the knowledge.
What's going on is all a very natural process, and we see it within ourselves. It goes back to like the fight or flight mode. Okay, it goes into a protection mode and a need for protection mode. And this system right now is operating on the male side, which is the protector. Okay, and that's what people need to comprehend. And they're supposedly protecting us. And we just have to realize these roles that we're operating in and step back to where we're supposed to be. We're really supposed to pull up our big boy pants. We're supposed to be taking care of ourselves.
Yep. Absolutely. But some of us weren't taught that. Some of us weren't taught any of that. We're like, it's like, man, I'm 40 years old. Why am I just learning how to put on my pants by myself now, But
and unfortunately, part of it right now, too, is that we have to correct the presumption that they have to protect us.
Yes.
And we don't need them anymore. And on top of that, that means learning how to stand in honor. I remember when I took my my concealed carry permit class. My concealed carry permit class was supposed to be 3 hours. It ended up being an 8-hour-long course, and it was taught by a guy who helps write the laws for the state of Florida for firearms. Well, it's the 780 laws. And that's why it ended up being so long. But the amazing thing is that the attitude that somebody would have prior to really studying and knowing that information compared to learning that information, now not only do you have a permit now to conceal carry a weapon, but now you have this huge burden of responsibility on your shoulders, because you're not just dealing with the court of record, but you're dealing with the public court of opinion as well. And you find it even stronger case that you have to be the man, and you have to stand in honor. And it's the same thing with this information. Once you really start absorbing it, you start learning who you really are, or who you're really supposed to be. And you need to become that being. And that's my blurb on that.
No, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I think the process where I began, at first I was confused, and then I understood that's, wait a minute, there's something not right going on, and suddenly I realized, wait a minute, it's fraud, and suddenly I'm angry, and then suddenly, you know, I keep proceeding and learning, and then suddenly a couple years later I'm going, it's exactly what it's doing, what it's supposed to do. And if it wasn't for that adversity or those obstacles, those wouldn't be opportunities for us to grow and learn. And in the end, I am thankful for the mistakes that I've made. So I've learned to come and seek correct knowledge, and it's changed my opinion. And so it's I can sometimes empathize for the position of the fiduciary or the trustee or the judge, you know, or the man acting as a judge. I can have empathy and going, hey, you know, most of us are belligerent. Most of us don't know who we are and don't know where we come from and have no idea what we're messing with. So I don't know. It's we keep learning and correcting the record.
And what you touched on there is so true, is that when people start learning this stuff, there's stages that they're all going to go through. You know, they're going to go through a stage of disbelief. They think it's all bunk, it's BS. And then they're going to go through a stage of anger, that they've been tricked, they've been fooled, that they've been actually living in basically a computer game that they didn't know existed. And then they come to a level of acceptance, and then, okay, now it's time to man up and start taking care of the matter.
Absolutely. I think those. I think they said the 5 stages of grief are parallel to the 5 stages of awakening, and this is those that denial and bargaining and anger. And, you know,
absolutely.
Those we cycle through those phases during this process. Again, we still get angry at times and still want to fight, you know, and I was like, I'm going to get that judge or that attorney, and I'm going to, you know, we still have that, and I think overlapping and looking at the spiritual realm, we have a chance to reconcile that with ourselves and going, okay, now listen, I just want peace. You know, I was angry for a moment. I thought he had done me wrong, and, you know, I know he's just doing what he's doing, and I haven't done my part, and I'm trying to come correct and have proper standing and stay in honor, and I want to correct this.
He doesn't know who you are. He thinks that you're still that enemy combatant, that belligerent, that child that needs to be taken care of, the incompetent, and so he's just operating the way he's supposed to be operating. And when people realize that, you've got to get past that stage of anger and acceptance, and then be able, before you're ever going to be able to start correcting the record.
Yeah, I mean, again, at some point, I'm like, I don't really want to come into if I get invited to the courtroom, I don't want to come in and I'm not trying to expose the fraud and embarrass anyone. I was like, listen, if I'm here in person, that means I haven't done my paperwork correctly, and or if I have, I just want to make sure it's in the record. But I don't know. It's kind of understanding what needs to be done, and at some point, it's like the battle isn't. Sometimes we look the battles with the judge, and maybe the battle isn't with the judges. It has to be handled privately with whatever entities playing the adversary.
Well,
it has to
just maybe that battle starts inside you.
Yeah, this is why I say the spiritual is parallel to the process, is that we've constantly got to be correcting the record within our heart, in our mind, in our guts, in our soul, and with our Creator. We have to constantly be checking our intentions and making sure that we're coming with the right intent, or we at least allowed to be guided to the proper intent or will of the Spirit.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct on all that. Well, it being, going into 3 hours of this now. Let me move along and see if we got somebody else on here, so eventually we can get this knocked out, brother. Hey, I appreciate your call, and you are 100%. Everything is about intent, and the courts will tell you that.
I yield.
Thanks, brother. Gatekeeper?
Yeah. Oh, no, if anybody else has any questions, comments, just unmute yourself or push *6. I guess not.
All right, well, then we could sign out of here, and, I want to let everybody know this is going to be put up to YouTube. Gatekeeper always makes sure that's taken care of, and so people can go back and review it. We didn't have too much details of process or what to do now, what to do then, but you can probably pick that up through the conversations from this call. This was actually a great educational call. So you want to sign us out, Gatekeeper?
Andre, you have anything else to add? Huh. All right. She's on the board, but she could have been busy. So, all right, I'll go ahead and sign us out then.
I just had a busy time. She might even be crashed. She might be sleeping with the phone in her hand.
All right. Just to let you guys know what you heard from Brian, what you heard from me earlier, we're having problems streaming to YouTube. Actually, we fixed the problem streaming to YouTube. Now YouTube's not accepting the streaming device. So it's a battle every week, but I do swear up and down that, as you can tell, each recording gets posted to YouTube within the next hour or two after the conference ends. So it's there for you to view. I'm very sorry because every week I try to tell you, I promise, I swear, it's going to load, it's going to broadcast, it's going to stream right, and then we have these difficulties. But yes, I do guarantee that the recordings from tonight's and last Monday and the Monday before and then the Mondays ahead of us will be uploaded to YouTube. Throughout the week, I will try to do some more tests on there, but I can tell you right now, I'm not going to make no guarantees. So it's trial and error. Hopefully one day I'll discover that it was something so simple that, I can just flip a switch, and that's the problem. All right, as you know, the disclaimer in the beginning, I'm not going to go through it. It's getting late, so I'm going to close this out then. Anything else, Brian?
No, that's it. That's all I got. And my disclaimer is always, if you ever start researching the free man movement or sovereignty or free man on the land, run screaming, because this will change your life. Good night, guys.
Oh, I have one thing to add to that, bro. Oh. You there, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay, I have one thing to add to that, too. You guys were talking about, I don't want to take up too much time here. Just want to let everybody know that there are a lot of other things going on out there as far as the securing yourself and becoming a creditor and thinking you're taking over the straw man as the executive trustee. What Brian has talked to you about and what Judge Johnson has talked about, and Judge Doucette as well, taking the becoming the master, the owner of the birth certificate, not a mere trustee or beneficiary. So I learned the hard way. I went the route and secured myself, and now I'm facing a lot of, turmoil, trying to understand that, that's not really the way to go if I don't want to contract with the system anymore. So I just want to make that on a sidebar note, just you find something, you hear something from somebody, make sure you do your own research on it. Make sure you research hard, get a second and third opinion, and common sense plays a big thing in it too. So we're here to help you get through this process step by step. And if we don't know it, if I don't know it, I direct you guys to who might know or resources that you can look into and read and study. That's it. Okay, guys, you have a good night. See you guys back here next Monday. Peace.